here somewhere. Yeah, so do people still remember the first half after eating? Mostly? Yeah, that afternoon, after lunch sleep feel. Yeah. Right, so we did this stuff. Yeah, so then keeping global values is kind of the next thing I was going to talk about because, you know, that get Yesod function and the handler monad returns the foundation data value, rather. So that's this thing, right? And it's kind of what everything's wrapped around. You got your instance and all that. And it's why your Y application. This is a really silly example. So you wrote this massive website here for LambdaConf, but like you're a contractor, and PureScript Conf wants you to write a website for them too, right? But you're really lazy. You're a contractor. So you basically want to, parameterize your whole application over who it's for. So one way you can do that is, if you want to keep kind of a data chunk around with the application that's kind of accessible anywhere, you can do that in your foundation data type. So here is finally the first example where it's actually becomes something. It becomes a record with a string field. And then we can actually use that get Yesod function to get what that string is, and then use it throughout wherever. And then when you initialize your foundation data type here for the warp, you fill it in. So I think this line probably requires some explanation. So get Yesod is a function in the handler monad. Fmap is functor map, but since it's get Yesod is a handler monad, it's also a functor here. We can do fmap, which is going to apply this app4, which is just from the foundation. It's just the accessor function from the record. And that'll apply it even though this is still in the monad. And then we can actually bring it out of the monad with the bind. Get Yesod gives you your foundation data value. So back here, type looks like that. So for whatever foundation data type you're parameterized on, it returns you whatever instantiated, the actual value that your application has for it. So yeah, this is a really silly example, but you can do this in yeah.
Wait, F4 is a value, not a function. So I can Fmap it or something.
So app4 is the accessor for the value in the record, right?
Oh, so it takes an app and wraps a string.
Yeah, exactly.
And what are you Fmapping over for? To get the handler?
To get the string here from because this returns, something like this. It returns this, and then
Fmap is defined for
for the handler monad.
So that's done through template Haskell, or
What?
how do you read
Well, you can. I think it might just be derived because it's a monad. Yeah. Yeah. I think. So in a more real example, you might split this up and have you might have like some setting structure that you parse out of a file. And that could, contain things that aren't just a string in your application. It can contain things that are more relevant, like database connection parameters or the host name of the machine that ends up running on, or things like that you can get at runtime. And this is kind of a more real example of something that you might do in with storing values in the foundation data type. You really don't have to understand any of this IORef stuff. Basically, the idea here is that we want a nice old-fashioned style visitor counter on our website. So we have a reference to an int here, as opposed to just an int, so we can actually modify it in place. And that's what this does. This just gives us back the value +1 while simultaneously modifying the value in there to be one higher. And that's what's giving us our actual visitor counter, right? We just get the reference out, and then we modify it and get the value out, and then we can put it in our template.
So the accessor, is it accessor the hash?
Did I say what?
What do you call that? The hash curly braces visitor.
So I guess there's like name overloading here. I'm sorry. So this is accessor for this, right? But then we override it here, and it's shadowed. So this visitor refers to this visitor refers to this visitor. Sorry about that.
I was thinking that somehow this understands IOTA.
No. Yeah, that would be confusing. But yeah, this isn't too important. I just kind of wanted to give a slightly less silly example here. But I mean, wait, what? So I was going to do an exercise now, if people feel ready. I basically described it here because I got tired of pasting big chunks of code up there. Let's see, what did I? Yeah, so we want to actually do some calculation in a handler. So, and I kind of wanted to have something with the foundation data type too. So we're going to actually have a function in the foundation data type, which is a binary operation on 2 integers. You're going to have a page with a route, with 2 dynamic integers that it takes. It's going to go to the handler. It's going to get those ints. It's going to perform whatever binop from the foundation data type onto those and get that out on a page. Oh yeah, so this is kind of what your foundation's data type is going to look like for that. And then there's a note in the file about the fmap thing, so you don't have to worry about that too much for being able to get the binary operation out. Do people understand what I want them to do here?
Man, I did not find that fmap note before. That was really nice.
Were you looking on ahead?
Online, whatever. There's a comment in there where he explains how to get the bin off.
You gotta read the comments. The comments are valuable.
I didn't read that comment.
Yeah. Fair enough. Reading the types can be quite valuable in itself. All right, so everyone, I guess get going on that. I'm not working on this right. Fair enough. Let's see.
Is it in that repository?
Yeah, so if you go to the slides repo, then it's in the releases.
Where?
If you go to GitHub.
Yeah, I already.
No, you can't clone it. Go to GitHub.
In releases.
Yes,
Okay,
in the
yeah,
releases,
got it.
there's a binary download. Because, it's not really the right practice to upload your PDFs to your version control, but I wanted you to be able to download it without building it, so I made it a release. I don't know if I got to tell anyone.
No, you have to add a route in there. It says like page 1 / sharpen / sharpen. No, yeah, no, this is here.
Oh yeah, I did.
Right, and you write a new route, and then here after space, the way you name your parameter is you do hash the data type. So now there's colon page 1. You want to change this here on the slash. It'll give you a page 1 that takes an int, and it'll just take those ints out.
No, hold on, that gets like
The first line here. Yes, yeah. I was.
That's helpful. Yeah, I feel like just gotta use this whole website.
Websites, that weird.
Because I've never done one for like ever.
This is also how I did web programming. It's how I learned web programming and Haskell.
Oh, you're lucky.
Basically. Yeah, and then I tried doing other web programming, and it's like, oh god.
Like, why would I want to do this?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I still don't know much web programming now, to be honest. So. And I did learn some Elm. That's kind of fun.
So you need default layout for the new page, or just do default layout?
Yeah, because that's an actual handler, not just a widget.
Oh, okay.
Default layout is the thing that takes our widgets and lets them actually run handler mode.
Gotcha.
It's like run widget T. It's not actually.
Make a monad transformer for everything, like the.
I mean, I also forgot to mention that widgets are also monad transformers.
Oh yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of things in Haskell code are monad transformers. So
It ends up kind of being the right way to model these sort of things.
fair enough. Alright, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah. What's under documented?
The syntax for route description. And so far, I don't understand the implications of having multiple methods there.
I can.
If you omit a method, then you get like a different scheme of naming things.
Yeah.
I don't know where to find the documentation on that stuff to understand it better.
I can do a brief spiel on that after we do this, maybe.
Alright, cool.
So my current strategy is make a new route and then that calls. Is this a handler? Is that the name?
That's your resource.
That's my resource. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's my resource.
And you should put an R behind it.
What's that?
Is it required?
It's not required, but it's really it's the only way. you don't not put the R. It just makes it much easier to keep track of what is a resource.
Oh, okay. So
It's a convention. It's not necessary, but like I never see it not done. So.
So now, if I were to go to if this compiles, if I were to go to this route, it should give me this.
Yeah, it should be the same sort of things. Yeah, but the thing is, so you do have one little thing I spot. So for your route declaration there, /a/ you're doing the URL interpolation, or that not the URL, the variable interpolation style, but you don't actually put in the curly braces for this. It's just hash and then a type.
I know.
Yeah, everything's fine.
Why you should use them. All right. So then that should be that should then call this anytime, but I can't even tell the difference.
So change something real fast and give it a try. Yeah.
So is there a way to define routes so that I can essentially partially apply the handler and say
Just make it another parameter. Just make it a text parameter and match on it.
so you're saying text here, and then where would you match? Oh, you're saying actually in that.
In the handler, yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's a little ugly. I realize that kind of, but.
I would. Well, the reason you don't want to do that is you want to get a 404.
Well, yeah. Then you just match anything and give them a not found.
It's worth a try.
Is there a good way to do something like that, not using tech? Is there a good way to make an ADB that you're going to want to match against?
Yeah, I kind of brought that up shortly before lunch, I think. So I've never actually done that. I've seen kind of the code to do it. Basically, yeah, you basically just do a couple type classes for each way, I think, and you just implement a couple functions for. I think it's what's a type class? It's like it's like path component or something, or path pieces, I think they call them. So something like that. Yeah, just implement a couple functions. You can do whatever type you want. I don't know if there's anything like a derived generic for it. It'd be kind of nice if there was, to just match the names of your data constructor or whatever.
Yeah. Well, so to do that, you'd have to create create an ADT and then derive whatever path pieces machinery from that ADT.
Yeah, but that's totally something derivable can do, right? So, or derived generics can do, I mean, at least.
I just assume that generalized new type deriving and derived generic can accomplish anything until proven otherwise.
I've seen it do things.
Yeah.
I mean, ASON.
Yeah. I just kind of sprinkle that wherever and then
Yeah.
kind of hope my problems go away.
I know, it's great.
It works. Awesome.
Yeah.
Can I use
Yeah. Overloaded strings will take care of it. Yep.
I don't quite grok all those differences yet.
I mean, so overloaded string doesn't actually, it works how you expect. The only problems it ever introduces is that now your literal strings are now generic, and sometimes that means you might need to add a type annotation because it doesn't actually know which one you mean. It's really the only thing that overloaded strings introduces that can be a problem.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you have any idea how to return a 404, sir?
Yeah, not found. Literally NOT and then capital F found. Yeah. It's on one of the slides. Very nice. I don't even have that in my Emacs. No, I don't know what you're in actually. What are you in?
Visual Studio Code.
I know.
Very nice. Very nice.
Apparently that's a non.
I know there's a lot more I can do with my Emacs config, but
Any idea why text is not in scope at 45?
probably because we don't have text.
Oh, I thought you were using. No, but
We're not actually using classy prelude or anything.
Oh, so what am I? Should I just use string?
You can just use string, yeah. You could also import text.
Where would you import text from?
Data.text.
The alternative is like, so capital B, nope, lowercase?
Capital, both.
Dot text, maybe?
You can pull our parameters out and
Oh, and then you need to add it to Cabal file.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so how do I now I need some dynamic text here. I'm sure you went over it.
Well, so the first thing,
So what I want is I want
you first want to add the things together, right? Or do the operation on them, right?
So grab that comment line from here.
And
That's
that'll
the
give you the
first thing
function.
wanna do.
And then you want to apply that to your numbers you get.
So that
Yeah, I'll let you help them. Teaching is the best way of learning.
Oh,
How are things going over here? Yeah?
So how do you use the redirect? I'm trying to redirect to something.
Yeah, sure. You just redirect it in a route. So a resource name, rather, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
If you have like two, okay, I was trying to do something clever, but
Oh yeah, go ahead. Like lots of people are doing fun things on the side here.
So, so
I don't want to stop them.
If you have two whamlets like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it gonna figure out the indentation across whamlets?
No.
Or it has to be in the same whamlet?
Yeah, because that's no longer.
It's
Well,
no longer part
you
of
would
that.
embed it. It depends.
Okay, so I could do it by putting
Yeah,
something here
yeah.
and then saying like.
Yeah. That's how you do it. Yeah.
Okay, got it. With the-
Otherwise,
with
they'll
the
just be
character.
all at the top level of wherever
the
that's
character,
defined. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Can you, like, if you have like a class function, can you show it? Is there any way to, like, because I would like to, like, print that, you know,
Right.
something plus something equals blah, blah, blah. Is it, or would I have to take
You'll have to do it manually. Yeah.
Okay.
And you know, yeah. Sorry.
And
What kind of?
so set title here,
Mhm.
HTML.
Sure.
And I
Oh,
had
right. You
string-
tried to put something else.
I had a string, so is there like a conversion function?
To HTML.
To HTML.
Yep. And I think it's just capital H, nothing else. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry about. You know, this is one of those sneaky overloaded strings
Yeah,
I don't
so-
tell people about yet. I guess I should probably mention it. I think it's lowercase TML. I think.
Sorry?
I think the TML are lowercase.
Okay.
Yeah, that looks more like what I usually see.
Okay. So.
You guys need to do prints or a dollar there though.
Sorry, where? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Got it.
That was that.
No,
Great.
there.
Yeah. Great.
Okay.
Next one, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here, but I will be explaining.
Okay.
I mean, there's also stuff I won't be explaining because there's a lot of stuff in there.
Are we gonna be in Foundation mostly?
You're still mostly going to be creating new handlers and such, but I'm going to talk a fair bit about what's in here. But the comments do a pretty good job too for some of it, but I'll go into a bit more detail. I mean, lots of people, maybe I should move on. Most people are just kind of playing around now with the last example, so, or exercise. So.
Make this guessing as a version.
Let's see.
Or you change task by
Okay, so, what was your name?
Adrian.
Adrian. Brought up a sneaky overloaded strings I didn't mention. So the set title there, it's actually HTML type it takes, but it's a sneaky overloaded string, so all those quotes is just turning them into HTML for you. So if you do want to try to dynamically set your title to something, you want to use toHTML to turn like a string type thing into an HTML. But that's not too important. I'm thinking, so people seem to be having a little bit of fun doing stuff, so I'm going to give you like 5 minutes or something to wrap up what you're currently kind of playing around with, and then we'll go on to next stuff.
So if I want to do that case, let's say I'm gonna limit my bin ops to like known. I can't like compare functions, can I? So
No, breaks
have,
reference
so I have to
transparency.
like fix the bin ops and put it in a data type or something. Like.
Yeah, you basically have to make a tiny mini, data structure and then have an interpreter for that, basically,
and
right?
has all the bin ops that are possible and have string representation for each.
Yeah, you basically write a little interpreter,
Yeah. Okay.
which is lots of fun. But, something.
Yeah, yeah.
Number 4, how wander.
Going on ahead.
Looking around.
Fair enough.
It's a big jump from text 3.
Yeah, that's a little bit of me talking. I mean, I'll basically tell you it's some of those things you don't need to look at right now.
Is it like a standard
Yeah,
Yesod layout?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. My whole next section is like industrial structure.
Nice. That's cool.
To get you into how if you're actually writing an application, how is it going to actually look?
That's important considering I have no idea what that looks like,
Yeah.
especially with Yesod.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about that and some some of the extra things it has. And yeah,
Dope.
it's going to be good.
All right, so any guesses why? So I defined a route like that.
Uh-huh.
Down here, I've got matching on that first parameter, I think. Does
Yeah.
it seem plausible?
It seems plausible. Yeah.
Okay, and instead it's 404s.
Go back. Well, no, I think I know what it is. Go back. So I think you got rid of the /a in your route matching, in your routes definition.
That's entirely plausible.
I think I noticed that earlier.
Did you?
You're not wrong!
So you just got to memorize the code and people you glance at. And
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
It's clicking, man.
Great. No, everyone's doing great. I'm really happy.
So do you have any guesses why
Boy.
routes are overlapping now?
Oh,
Oh yes, I do know why.
great. So you were looking at the thing, so you kind of know the way around that, but yeah,
It's gonna have to be like.
you can throw bang patterns in front of it, or you can make it non-overlapping. That's probably better anyway.
Oh, yeah.
there's an override for like, oh no, I know what I'm talking about
Nope,
here.
nope, I don't know what I'm talking about. Don't. You don't want to compile it.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I understand. Maybe I think I got confused with the types and stuff like that. So, Vinelet, what is the type of this? It should be
It'll return you a widget.
Huh?
It'll return you a widget.
a widget, okay.
And
Hamlet returns you a HTML.
no,
Well,
URL.
an HTML route.
HTML
or route.
URL, which is parameterized on your route.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's different from HTML.
Oh, that's probably just a lie type again.
Uh,
Well, no, that one's real attree. Sorry, that one's after it's been rendered. So I think there it's a real
once you
HTML.
do the default layout,
Yeah, I
that,
think-
that does that or something.
Yeah, that's going to turn it into an actual rendered thing where those have been
Because what I was
resolved.
trying to do is I was trying to put this into a separate function.
Right.
Like I was trying, so you would have to do something like this, right? I mean, could you do this like link for?
Yeah, as long as the thing you're embedding is of widget type.
And okay, so then I could write a widget type here, right? I could say link for. I guess it would be a widget.
It's just widget. There's no. Widgets don't have any arguments.
It's already a.
So widget's actually, again, a lie. It's a monad
type
transformer, but the type alias just has nil as the return value. Because widgets generally don't return anything. It's just state held in the monad
No, it's a
transformer. Yeah.
The unit.
Yep. Unit, not nil. Thank you. Unit
I
nil.
always get.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll try that.
Okay, cool.
Thanks.
Well, I'm probably going to try to move on here.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh,
I
yeah.
can try it on that.
All right. So, hope you all kind of wrapped up some of your own personal playing around. It seems like people are doing really well, getting a grasp on what I've been doing so far. So let's do some more stuff. So,
I'm just curious.
yeah.
I mean, my curiosity was definitely piqued by the asking us to set up some of the other like 404 pages and redirects and that kind of stuff.
yeah.
Where could we find like the answer on how to just do that, or like an example of doing that?
So in the repo, I didn't actually really do most of those things in the completed version.
Okay.
We'll run into some more of them, I think.
Perfect.
But if anything, I don't like cover in enough detail. The Yesod book is really good. It's just I hope that get you able to do things faster than if you were like trudging through the Yesod book, which gives you a lot of detail in every section.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So our next section, we're talking about kind of the industrial Yesod structure, how you'd actually do Yesod in the wild, like when you actually want to make a real application, right? Right now we've been having fun, but we haven't been. It doesn't scale, right? Everything we've done so far is one file. It just breaks down. So we want to, split that up because I think I just said what the slide is. Yeah. Okay, but yeah. So one of the first things that comes to mind is the handlers, right? Those are supposed to be our kind of a core application logic. It'd be nice to split those out when we have like some big chunk of core application logic for handling payments and one for handling users or something, right? So we run into this issue though. We have our handlers, and our handlers use our routes to declare, to do links and such. So these need our route definitions to be able to do that. If they're not around, you can't use them. But make Yesod defines dispatch over our routes, so it needs the handlers in order to be able to dispatch to them. So right now there's a circular dependency here. You have to put everything in the same file. So when you start doing real stuff and you want to break stuff up, there's a split up version of make Yesod. There's make Yesod data, which takes our routes like before, takes same stuff as before really, and it generates our routes and rendering functions so that our Hamlet and Lucius, etc., can do our URL interpolations and such, but it doesn't define our dispatch. So we have a separate function make Yesod dispatch, which does dispatch on the route to our handlers. So what this looks like in actual structure is you have a file where you end up having all of your kind of applications core data types defined, your routes defined with make Yesod data, things like that. And then you have a separate file. Well, rather, so first all your handlers load that so they can do their thing. Then you have a separate file which loads all your handlers, and then it defines dispatch. The other thing, though, is we have all these quasi-quarters around, right? they're pretty ugly. Your syntax highlighting usually doesn't work. There's lots of problems with the quasi-quotas. They're kind of picky and whatnot. So pretty much all our quasi-quotas, I think all of them, yeah. I think that probably the outside file ones came first, actually. We have file versions where we load up from an external file. So in general, when you're actually doing a real Yesod application, you don't put quasi-quotas in unless you're writing like a library. So sometimes for libraries, or a lot of times for libraries, you will use quasi-quotas just because libraries usually don't want to have too much styling or anything anyway. You have like minimalistic HTML-defined structure of what the library is providing you. But they don't need much anything else. So they just use quasi-quotas so they don't need to pull in external files, defined inline, things like that. So normally in an actual application, you put things in outside files. I kind of got off track there because I started talking about quasi-quotas for Hamlet and such without putting up the slide for it. But for routes, we want to put it in an external file because you end up with like 20, 30 pages more. It just becomes a lot in your file. And same thing and worse, like with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, you don't want 10,000 lines of CSS in your Haskell. So you put it in a separate file, and then we have these file loading template Haskells. And naming's really consistent. You got Hamlet file, Lucius file, Cassius file, Julius file, normal stuff. Yeah. So I'm going to move on to the scaffolding structure. So if you're familiar with Stack, you may be aware of Stack templates. And Stack templates provide you basically pre-cloned projects to build off of. And there's a lot of these there's like 6 or 8 for Yesod with different, like database backends and minimal or things like that, simple. And I've kind of simplified the ones I've given you. I mean, it looks like a lot, but the ones you actually get have even more niceties than the one I'm giving you. Because the ones that you get from the templates usually have something like a static subsite, and I haven't talked about subsites yet. Basically, they'll have these features that let you serve static files kind of separately, make it easy to split it up onto a separate domain if you want to avoid transferring cookies to them, and have good caching on your static assets. And they'll actually do things like automatically build or hash your files and name them in such a way so that it'll automatically always just put caches infinite in the future, and then it'll only refetch it if you serve it, something with a different hash on it. So that way it never has to fetch it after the first time.
So does it connect to like Redis cache backends?
Oh yeah, so there's also middlewares, which I don't actually have slides for, sadly. But that was one of the other benefits of the web application interface. So if you have something that just kind of handles like caching whole requests and stuff like that, middlewares are transformers that sit between your application and your server, and they can transform stuff as they wish. So you can use those to cache whole requests. Use them that you can add headers or add CSRF protection, things like that. But there's also some Redis libraries, I believe, for if you want to do things more manually.
Well, I just asked because you said that there's caching in those templates. You've got some caching configured.
In the ones, so this we don't really have any caching, but
How is it caching it?
I'll just local cache. What I mean is, no, I mean browser caching is what I really mean.
Okay.
What I mean is, so browsers will, you set, when you serve a resource to the browser, you set, how long it can keep this for before it needs to refetch it.
Using like e-tags
You use e-tags to say that like, you can keep it forever because I'll change it in the future.
Yeah.
And that way you can save it with the new like browser headers for like cache immutable kind of things. You can actually make it so it won't even do like the quests where you then give it like a, what's the resource not changed status?
Don't remember.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But normally if they request just to check if it's changed, they send you a hash, you compare it against your hash, and then you still have to send them a response being like, oh, it hasn't changed. But
Yeah, that's 3 or 4. I think.
4 or 3. No,
Three or
no, it's not 4. It's a
3.
3 or 4. Yeah, that's what it is. Thank you. Anyway, so the templates give you the scaffolding, the site scaffolding, and this is a slightly toned down version. So there are extra folders and files and stuff in the actual one a bit, and some of the stuff we might get, or we should get to later. We'll bring in a couple new files in here, but let me kind of do an overview. So config is configuration file. So earlier I talked about loading configuration from a file, putting in a structure and having it in your foundation data type. So this is a YAML file which settings live in. So it would be like if you had a database configuration. And here right now it's mostly things like a few debugging options and port information, what ports you listen to and stuff. And then that's parsed by settings.hs. You probably don't want to look at that. It's just a YAML parser. These are basically being used as static assets. Common here is handlers for your favicon, your robots.txt. It does something a little weird. It has like it sets a cache header high on them, and it like embeds the files in the Haskell binary to make it efficient or something, I guess. I'm not really sure how valuable that is, but it's in the templates. But again, that's not too important, but it's in common there. App, I'm pretty much not going to talk about. It's a bunch of kind of wrapping stuff for executing things with. Well, so there's like 3 files in there. One of them is kind of the real file. A couple of others just kind of pass along where main is, because there's like I don't know. Don't worry about it too much. There's a lot in there, but it's not generally that important. I don't think I've ever changed anything in there in any of my Yesod projects.
Did you write it, or was that from the book?
No, that's from the templates that you clone down with Stack. Wait, so at the end of my slides, there's a slide like how you start a Yesod project IRL. It's like use Stack templates, basically. And there's a list, so yeah. Anyway, so then we have like import here. No foundation is just kind of a convenience re-exporting all the useful things you want to import, and you import no foundation wherever you can't load foundation yet. So what that means is if you're writing something that kind of an extension to foundation loads it, then you can't load foundation, you get a circular dependency. So no foundation is just a convenience file to load before you can load foundation and get all the data types everywhere. And that just gives you kind of the basic stuff. It's not the application's specific data types. Then there's also import down here, which imports foundation and those other things. And that's what you generally just import in your handlers or whatever. It just gives you all the kind of convenience stuff, foundation, data types, all that. A separate folder for your templates. So these are what are being loaded by your, Hamlet file, Lucius file, Cassius file, Julius file. No one uses Cassius file. Anyway, yeah. So they go in there. You just, yeah. Foundation is where make Yesod data happens. Foundation is where all the actual data type declarations happen, where you have your Yesod instance, things like that. An application is where you actually initialize your application effectively. It's where all your handlers are loaded, where dispatch happens, and it's also where you build your initial foundation data value, because that can get sort of long because you can do complex, database initialization and stuff in there. So the one you have right now, the foundation has 2 things, 2 pieces of the record, 2 fields. You have just the settings. So this is what's being generated by settings.hs when it parses settings.yaml. And you have a logger, which is used somewhere. Yes? This is all this is in the scaffolding. Yeah. And I'm not making you write any of this because you don't have to, because you can always grab the scaffolding.
In the example that we had before, we had a binary operation as part of the foundation, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So if you want something like that, how do you overwrite this? You add to this?
You add to this. Yeah, so you add another field, and then you initialize it in application along with the other ones. Yeah, so this is what I was just saying. This is kind of some funky stuff that lets you override stuff from the environment. It's not terribly important, but it's basically saying you can set the environment variable host to override it, but normally it's any IPv4 host. Any port 3000, but you override it, that sort of thing. Get IPs from headers, which is handy if you're running it behind a reverse proxy, which I believe is what the Yesod devel server does anyway. Handles niceties for you. Like when you're Yesod devel server gives you a nice auto-refreshing page when your code's building. So you can just go to it and it'll just refresh it for you and wait for your application to build. It'll give you nice little happy messages. And then you have the logger. So right now, make foundation. So this is where you actually build that foundation data type. And this is in an application.hs. Right now, it's basically just initializing the app logger. This may be unfamiliar. Yeah?
So just syntax question. What's that, the double?
Yeah, I was just circling that and saying this may be unfamiliar. This is, I believe, record wildcards.
Yep.
Yeah. So basically, we have our app, right? And it has these fields. What this lets you do is it lets you create an app, and it just pulls these fields from the things in the environment that are named that. And that means we just don't have to repeat them all here. As long as we name our logger, app logger, our settings, app settings, that'll just create the app data type with those filled in.
So I'm still kind of confused. What about the make Yesod logger at the back? It has that double.
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
This is just a monadic composing thing.
Okay.
Don't worry about it too much. It's not the point of this thing. But
Wait, sequencing two computations.
yeah.
They run one after the other.
Oh.
You could read
And the
that
value from
and
this goes into that, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, traditionally with denotation, you put in 2 lines to be like, you get that thing, and then put in another variable to do the same thing.
I see.
Yeah, actually, all do does is expand to things like that. So, yeah, so that's kind of some of the overall structure there. We're going to talk a little bit about default layout because I haven't explained it too well. I've been telling people it's, it takes a widget and turns it into your handler, right? And that is what it does, but it's just a function in your Yesod type class, like some of the stuff we've been using at least. And that means we can override it. It's just got a default. So yeah, these are some of the things that are in there. We'll talk about some of these later. Some of these, this sort of middleware is where we'd put middlewares to do extra Y features, like cache layers or CSRF stuff. But default layout takes a widget, gives us a handler. And in the template, the scaffolding, it's defined like this. And let's see, so I think I talk about default layout wrapper first. So basically what this is doing, I'm going to show you default layout wrapper. So default layout wrapper is kind of just top level HTML that you want on every page, just really always there things. Like you can have meta information about what your site is, so your search engines, things like that. The page title there, you see this widget to page content thing. I think this was supposed to be tabbed in. Was that supposed to be tabbed in? Oh no, maybe it's. I think it's that this one is supposed to be tabbed in with Hamlet file because I think it's with URL lender Hamlet file. Yeah. The formatting on this one didn't turn out too well.
So do you have to have a default layout wrapper?
Well, you can. It's kind of the way of doing things with the scaffolding. Like we weren't using it before, right? But we were just using the default, which is probably quasi-quoters in the Yesod library. But generally, you may want to override some stuff in here because you can do some stuff like have some JS on every page. That you can have a Node.js tag on your body, or yeah, and then when the JS runs, it changes the class, so you can do like big pop-ups if they don't have JavaScript enabled, or something like that. And those are things you want on every page. So it's nice to have this around just so you can change it. But if you notice, this is a Hamlet file, and that's because at the end of the day, we need to get HTML out, basically.
So my question was more of if I wanted to overwrite this for a particular page. Let's say.
Oh, you mean not use default layout?
Not use default layout.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've been calling default layout, right? I mean, it's just a function that we happen, it's in the type class, so we can just use it anywhere. You can just have this stuff somewhere else and just have your own one. Yeah, yeah. And yeah, it's just where you put your page head and page body, which is widget to page content basically splits up a widget into 3 things. Just a title, a content for the body, and content for the head. So I love your widget kind of breaks down to that, because once you get to the end and you don't need your set to keep track of which external things you have, external CSS, JavaScript libraries you've pulled down from the web or whatever, you can just render it into HTML, script tags, stuff like that. Yeah?
What's the message
We're going to get there. Yeah, we're going to get there. But anyway, so yeah, so once we have our widget broken up into the page content, basically we put these things where we want them, wrapped in whatever thing we always want, mostly, and do that. Now, widget file is actually the thing I wanted to mention first, because we didn't talk about widget file. We talked about Hamlet, Lucius, Julius file, but not widget file. Widget file is just a nice scaffolding bit that will automatically load from, like, if you give it the name homepage, it'll load homepage.julius, Lucius, Hamlet, and then build them together into a widget, which is really convenient because, usually when you write some component, you want some of each, and this will just build up into a widget for you. So you don't need to do any 2 widget calls. You don't need to load them each individually and do all that. Yeah. So this saves you that, and this is just something in the templating. So yeah, it's really pretty convenient. So this is what DefaultLayout.hamlet looks like. And again, we'll talk about this in a minute. But the main thing is default layout's been taking a widget. So we embed that inside our widget. And then this is kind of stuff we want in general, but where we need widgets, right? Because that last step has to be Hamlet, so we can't do anything fancy like embedding widgets. But here we can, so we can build, like this footer could be like a separate footer file, and we can embed that in, things like that. But this is where you kind of do your general site appearance structure, things like that. You'll have, you can have a nav bar that's on every page with default layout. And then you can just deal with the content of the individual page rather than building the whole page each time. So we're going to talk about sessions, which eventually gets us the messages. So sessions are great, but they're also terrible. Yeah, so I mean, sometimes you want to keep extra data about requests, or about a particular user your server is talking to. And sessions is the way to do that. You need some sort of tacked on information, like what their shopping cart has in it is apparently the traditional example, but it can make other things nice too. Like off chains can be much nicer with a little bit of extra information carried around. So that's what a session's for. Now you can do server-side sessions. It kind of used to be the main way of doing sessions, I think. But that's not the way Yesod usually opts to do it. You can do it with server sessions. There's a whole library for it that you can pull in and use server sessions, which sometimes may be justified. But in general, what Yesod chooses to do is use client sessions. And client sessions, how it's implemented here is it's in a cookie. And that's both signed and encrypted, because one thing that you'll use a cookie for is keeping track of what user this person is that they've logged in as. So you got to make sure it's not spoofable, and they can't just put whatever data in there. So you encrypt it so they can't see what data in there, and you sign it so that they can't just change it even if they broke the encryption. So client sessions are actually enabled by default in Yesod, but the scaffolding overrides it slightly here just because we have that config file. We would like to have a key. So it's one thing the client session does is it creates a key file. You might have noticed in your directories so far you've ended up with a client client session key.aes around. And that's what it's using for the encryption client and signing. And it wants to keep that around so that when you restart your application, people don't have to re-log in. You don't lose their state that's stored in their cookie. So the reason that the scaffolding overrides this is just so that it can put it in the config file and keep the top level a little cleaner. They're just really modeled as key value store. Underline is text to byte string, so text keys, byte string values, but then there's the text, but then they also have accessor and setters that just take text for the values, and they just convert them to byte strings to store internally, and then to convert them back when you get them out. So a lot of times, or at least most of the time, you don't really have to touch sessions directly. But a lot of times you want to have some sort of message floating around that, I mean, the traditional thing here is someone fills out a form. Your form is going to do some operation. You need to send them somewhere else because they're done with the form. You send them back to, let's say they're creating a page. You send them to the page they created. But you want to tell them that, like, hey, this was successful. So you got to store some sort of little note for them in the session. And Yesod comes with a pair of extra functions that just does this for you, get message and set message. That is, you just put little messages in the session for yourself on the next request. And this is what that default layout get message was for. The idea is that if you set the message somewhere, you'd like to check all the time if there's a message set so that you can display it to the user before you, like, you don't want the message of success showing up 3 pages later when you check for it again because you forgot it on the pages in between. So that's why in default layout we get the message here. And then this is just a way to, this is just saying if the message exists, put in a div, throw it in the HTML. Is everyone with me so far? All right, we're doing an exercise again. So basically, I want you to do some more redirect stuff. People went pretty far on redirect stuff, but I'd like you to try out messages mainly. So maybe you should try actually, set a message, redirect to a different page, get the message. And the main thing is also this is just getting you familiar with the scaffolding. You need to, create. We want to put your handler in a separate file, and what that means is you're going to have to import it from your application file because that's what's doing the dispatch. You're going to have to put it in your Capal file because your Capal file, it won't build stuff that's not in your Capal file. And you got to add the route to the route file, config routes. So, and I'd like you to play around, do something with default layout. Add something that shows up on all the pages. Maybe, add a couple pages to check that actually works. That sort of thing. Sound good?
So that would be a new file in Handler?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And you give it a module name, and yeah. You may just want to copy home, home.hs into whatever you'd like to call it. Yes.
So that's one comment.
What? Oh, okay. Bring issue with the scaffolding?
Yeah, so I think it looks like it's already been created using a template.
Yeah, yeah.
So what is it that we have to change? The foundation.
No. So you shouldn't need to touch foundation right now. So
Foundation is auto generated, right? It's generated automatically.
it's part of the scaffolding.
Scaffolding, okay.
It's not code generation, but someone else wrote it, so it's almost as good.
So then what do we actually do? What is the
So yeah, we want you to write a new handler and put it in a separate handler file. So if you go to handlers, you see home.hs, which is what's serving the home, what would serve the home page right now.
okay.
So you can copy that and change the name, right? And
Put something.
yeah, put something there, I guess, for now.
Okay.
And you need to add it to the config such routes because it's no longer a foundation. Or, well, make Yesod data. And you have to import it a couple places. You got to import it in an application and add it to your Capal file.
Import it in application.
Yeah, because that's what's defining dispatch. Make Yesod dispatch is an application.
Okay.
And it imports all your handlers. And that actually, there's a note in that file like where you put the import. Remember to put it in your Capal file.
Oh, it's make a new module in the handler for over. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So
It's not necessary because there's not much in the home file, but I want to just do it so that you get familiar with making handlers in separate files.
Okay. And I'm guessing common and home are examples you can work with that.
Yeah, common's the weird one. Look at home.
Okay.
So common's doing the favicon and the robots, and it's doing weird caching. You looked at that one. No,
It's the
no.
first one, so.
Fair enough. Yeah, that one's just kind of. It's part of the scaffolding.
Wait, so if we edit I was making a handler, we have to edit the application. How does it know where the handler is?
Exactly. So you got to edit application.hs because that defines dispatch.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yep.
It'd be funny if I just said no, it doesn't make any sense at all.
No, it doesn't make sense. Not at all. Make more sense to put in a foundation.
It's the only program in the Cabal file.
What?
Just nothing. Nothing stupid.
Rather, you should just use quasi-coders and put your Cabal in your Haskell files.
Madness.
Go on the full interpreter.
Yeah, I was playing around, but I kind of.
I don't know if those, it seems like those Yesod dots would give you trouble. I don't think.
Because I used odd, and then they said it's ambiguous, so I put this. But yeah,
it's-
something is still not working.
You
there.
put well, but that's gonna try to put it in someone else's namespace. You put like y add or y multiply, you know, without the dot. Like that's is gonna try to find that in the Yesod namespace, right? But it might be other things. Maybe you should do this instead.
Yeah, I'll do this first.
Yeah, then you can go back. Well, I don't want you to get too attached to like the earlier stuff because you should play around with the scaffolding, right? My description not making any sense up there. Oh yeah, you should change that like the one thing in config setting because that's something you do usually. You change something in config setting when you start up a new project.